Forget doubting Thomas, forget the nail marks, forget the hand in Jesus' side. I want to focus on just one tiny part of today's resurrection story. The doors of the house where the disciples had met were locked for fear of the Jews. What a fascinating little detail. Locked doors. Fear causes us to lock the doors. This image is enough to inspire fear. A crevasse has opened up in the middle of an ordinary street. A pedestrian just manages to balance at the edge of the precipice. Bystanders watch the scene, grateful that they narrowly avoided the gaping chasm. Fortunately, all is not what it seems. It's actually an incredibly clever piece of perspective street art by German artist Edgar Müller. Müller encourages passers-by to play with his art and to experiment with the issues of fear and reality. Interestingly, many passers-by will stare in fascination, but very few can bring themselves to walk over the chasms, almost half doubtful that it really is a trick of the eye. The truth is that fear is a great motivating factor in life, possibly more than we would care to admit. According to one recent survey, the boiler breaking down in the middle of winter was the UK's top fear, followed by having insufficient savings. This must have been pre-COVID. Another recent survey put heights as the number one fear in the Midlands, and ever the realists, death as the number one fear in the Northwest. I guess it all depends on the question asked, because on the 17th of March 2020, 22% of adults had experienced coronavirus panic, and 10% had experienced full-blown fear. Honestly, my greatest fears are illness and death. Strangely, perhaps for someone who believes in resurrection. I guess I also fear irrelevance. I'm also completely terrified of heights, but not flying. These things shape and motivate my behaviours. What are your greatest fears? Maybe in the fearful response of the disciples locking the doors, we can at least feel some solidarity. As we worship now, let's both be honest about our fears and brave enough to reveal them to the God who loves us. Did you know that the words "fear not" are repeated 366 times in the Bible? It almost makes you wonder if God is trying to tell us something. I don't think that God is encouraging us to be reckless. Installing a burglar alarm is a proportionate response to the fear of an uninvited intruder. Taking out life insurance is a proportionate response to the possibility of an untimely death. And in the context of your leader having been crucified as an insurrectionist, locking the doors seems like the least you should do. These things are normal. What I do think is insidious is the way in which over an entire lifetime the fear of something or other cramps the otherwise enormous potential of each human life. And most insidious of all is the way we think that 80 years and 10 is all we get, and have to work the entire plan of our life around it. If it wasn't for the extraordinary intervention of the resurrection, the disciples would have continued to live behind locked doors, marked men walking around with a target on their backs. They would have dispersed, headed back to Galilee, kept a low profile. Despite the extraordinary things they had seen and heard, the stories would have died with them. Let's be honest, it's what we would have done. That's normal human behaviour. What isn't normal, of course, is resurrection. The doors of the house where the disciples had met were locked for fears of the Jews. That's where normality generally leaves us. But one tiny little comma separates normality from fear-killing, death-defying, life-enhancing wonder. The doors of the house where the disciples met were locked for fears of the Jews, comma, then Jesus came and stood among them. He gate crashes this miserable party. He doesn't even bother to use a key. And there he is, standing right in the middle of all that fear. And what does he say? It's almost too beautiful for words. Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." If you hadn't got with the plan yet, then surely you would have by now. Resurrection doesn't just deal with the problem of fear by smashing its lodestar, death. It opens a great gaping wellspring of possibility. The entire history of humanity is divided in two by a comma on a page. Jesus stands in the midst of all that fear and announces to the universe, the game's up, the poles are reversed, the trap is sprung, and now life, not death, is the destination to which we are all travelling. Fear, you might lurk in the hallways of the human mind, but you are utterly defeated. Fear does, of course, lurk in the corridors of our minds, but it's yesterday's bad news and needs a stiff broom and the bright light of resurrection reality to sweep it away. This week, I invite you to bring each and every fear you experience into conversation with the resurrected Jesus, the one who needs no key, the one who is the key, who stands in the midst of us and says, "Peace be with you." Amen.